Hell yeah, too, Mr. Max here. Today, we'll be asking the question, what if every Pokemon region had a dragon type gym leader? Now, the dragon typing has always been one of the most powerful types in all of Pokemon, but also one of the rarest types as well. And this has caused nearly every Pokemon game to have a dragon specialist. However, they're almost always super late in the region, either one of the last two gym leaders or somewhere in the Elite Four. Um, so because of that, I thought it would be fun to try and develop new gym leaders for every single Pokemon region and try my best to not just relegate them to the end game like they are, in almost every Pokemon game. So let's jump right into the criteria for how I develop these teams. The gym leader team and position will be chosen based on the draconic Pokemon native to the region. Yeah, we're doing Lance rules with this video. Not every single region has a ton of dragon types available. So we're gonna be doing it like Lance does in the Johto Elite Four, where yes, he's the dragon champion, but he's functionally a flying type gym leader. All of his Pokemon are either dragon types or Pokemon that just look like they could be dragon. Yeah, so we're going to be using Pokemon that look draconic, could potentially evolve into dragon types, are in the dragon or a monster egg group if I really have to stretch it. But yeah, the gym leaders that I'm creating will use Pokemon that at least have a draconic vibe to them. And my basic rule was as long as the last Pokemon, their ace Pokemon, was a dragon type, I'll consider them to be a dragon gym leader. I'll be using the version of the region with the most options, that being, for example, Let's Go for Kanto, Platinum for Sinnoh, etc. And I'll be reusing any aces of any canon dragon type gym leaders or Elite Four members in the region unless necessary. Like I said, almost every single region has some kind of dragon specialist. Um, and just in order to, keep me being creative with these videos, I like not reusing any of those aces if possible. However, um, all other Pokemon from all other major trainers are fair game. So, for example, I will not be using Drake's Salamence in Hoenn, but why known as Altaria is fair game. And just like with the last video where I stipulated that I wouldn't necessarily be using fire type starters unless necessary, I also will not be using any pseudo legendary Pokemon unless absolutely necessary. Some regions just only have two or three valid dragon types or even, draconic, vibe looking Pokemon that I do really need to use those pseudo legendaries. Since most pseudo legendaries are dragon types, those pseudo legendaries take up a big chunk of the dragon type options. So I want to give some of the non-pseudo dragon types a spotlight where possible. And lastly, the gym leader's overall strength will be based on the canon gym leaders of the region in question, if not a little stronger. So average base stat total will be similar. The number of Pokemon won't necessarily be the same, but um, especially when it comes to the gens 5 and 6. Anything that's past gen, I'll say 6 or 7. I would like for those to have at least four Pokemon, and again, that'll kind of come by a case by case basis. But generally speaking, the strength of these teams will be relatively similar to how the base games would have done it anyway. So we're gonna start off with Kanto, and Kanto is notorious for being the region that introduced the dragon type. However, they only introduced a single dragon type line, that being the Dratini line, which forced Lance in the Elite Four to be a dragon specialist, but have to kind of cheat with what was a dragon type in that region. But luckily, like I said in the intro, we do have the Let's Go games to at least help us a little bit. So I think the fifth gym in the Let's Go version of Kanto would make the most sense for a Dragon Gym leader with Charmeleon, Seadra, Dragonair, and Alolan Exeggutor. If I didn't have the access to Alolan Exeggutor, this would probably be the fourth gym. just because there aren't a lot of options for taking on Dragonair. I don't really think any earlier would make sense, but also with just the three Pokemon, any later doesn't really make sense. But with this Alolan Exeggutor and the rest of that team, I think this works pretty well for a fifth gym. Seadra obviously eventually becomes a dragon type in Kingdra later, but also it does have the dragon egg group. Same with Charmeleon. I believe it has a dragon egg group. If not, Charizard might as well be a dragon, and proven by the fact that its Mega does in fact get the dragon typing. Next up, Johto. And Johto, unfortunately, did not really fix the problem. It added exactly one new dragon type in the entire Pokedex, that being Seadra's final evolve form. That was Claire's ace, so I can't use it. Um, so I thought it would actually be fun to put somewhere in this presentation the dragon type being the first gym, and I think the Johto region is a prime candidate for that. So for the first gym in Johto, we have a Horsey and a Dratini. And when I was initially theory crafting this team, I was actually thinking that this could potentially be the single strongest gym I will ever create in this entire series. And that might be a little weird because what's a Horsey and Dratini really going to do? Like, yeah, Dratini doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but you can brute force it. I was under the impression, at least from memory, I was thinking that Dratini learned the move Dragon Rage at level 13. And considering that does a set 40 damage, that would just absolutely devastate almost every Pokemon you could even possibly have up to that point, unless you majorly over leveled. But it actually learns at level 15, and I don't really think is necessary to bump the level up that high. It still will know Twister or whatever Dragon TM they would give at that point. But yeah, if you want to go, super ROM hack level crazy strong with this, you could bump it up to level 15 or higher and give it Dragon Rage. But I think it just being a dragon type that early with not having a whole lot of counters to it, I think I think that could work. Another possible option here would be adding Larvitar, uh, but I don't know. Just I didn't want him to have two different pseudo legendaries for the first gem, and I didn't want the ace to not be a dragon. Like up for a second, I was considering having it be the seventh or eighth gem and have Tyranitar be the ace, but it's not a dragon type, so I didn't really feel good about that. And plus, Horsey does eventually become a dragon type, so I'm fine with this being the gem I chose. Moving over to Hoenn, I actually created two different teams here. The first one being the fifth gym. And before I go any further, I just want to say the Dragon Tamer class in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire looks absolutely awesome. Their little sprite already looked great in Gen 3, but the remakes made him look incredible. Like this just looks like what they would create, what they would design for a dragon gym leader, period. So I really like this design here. So yeah, I wanted to spotlight just how cool this Dragon Tamer design is. But for the fifth gym here, we have Shelgon, Vibrava, and Altaria. Now I know I said that I would limit the amount of pseudo legendaries if possible, and I've already done three. Um, Especially in the earlier generations. Um, there weren't a lot of dragon types period. In fact, in this gen, the only dragon outside of these three lines here is Kingdra. So for the fifth gym, I think you could easily get away with him just having three Pokemon with these being those Pokemon. I could, take or leave Altaria, Dragon Dancing. I can hear argument either way about, it being too strong if it could Dragon Dance. But if that is a problem, maybe they could have like a Spheal or some other ice type available as a trade, either in Fall Arbor or Lava Ridge or something, at some point before this gym. But yeah, I think this stat wise technically is a lot lower than Norman's normally is, although he's, you know, massively overvalued because he has two slacking and they functionally have half of their base stats. Like it's, you know, this one's a little trickier, especially since it's only three Pokemon, but since the dragon typing has so many resistances, I think this can work as a very good roadblock for that point. But I did also create another one that is the eighth gym. And this is another one that will have some Pokemon that are maybe cheating a little bit. But we have Shelgon, Seviper, who is in the Dragon Egg group, Kecleon, who is in the Monster Egg group, but he I think, since he is based on a lizard and a lot of dragons are, based on lizards, I think it's fine for him to be here. Also, I think it'll be fun if, in theory, this Kecleon had its protein ability, which would make it where every time it uses, at least in Gen 6, every time it used a move, it would become the type of that move. So if, again, in theory, Kecleon could learn a dragon move, it could become a dragon type. Currently, Kecleon can't actually learn any dragon moves, even though other weird little lizards like Salandit and Scraggy can learn moves like Dragon Pulse. Kecleon can't. I think in my reality I'm creating, I would allow Kecleon to be able to learn a dragon move, like Dragon Pulse, Dragon Claw, Dragon Breath, something. I just think it works well enough on him. It can learn moves like Ice Beam and Flamethrower and Psybeam and a bunch of other weird moves that it doesn't really make sense to have. So it can learn Dragon Pulse, then Altaria, and then Flygon for the ace. Next up, we have Sinnoh. This one was also really tricky. I did all again have to resort to using a pseudo legendary on this team. Um, there is a good reason why there wasn't a dragon specialist in Sinnoh because the only dragon type available, period, that's not a legendary in Diamond and Pearl was Garchomp. That was it. Obviously, that became Cynthia's ace. And in Platinum, they didn't really fix the problem because the only other dragon type introduced in the main Pokedex was Altaria. So I really only had two options to work with. And after a bit of thought, I thought it'd be more fun to go in a completely different direction and essentially create a pseudo sand team to kind of go with Garchomp's other typing, his ground typing, his ability Sandville. So the first team I created here is the eighth gym with a Rhydon who is in the Monster Egg group, but I think still has a lot of elements of that could argue to be Draconic. Rampardos, Bastiodon, the two fossil Pokemon, and considering uh Aerodactyl is on Lance's team, I think it makes sense for fossils to be, to kind of have a similar Draconic vibe, and then Garchomp as the ace. I like this team a lot. I am very okay with gym leaders not having like a specific type if they follow a theme like this. So, any one of these can set up the sand, and in Gen 4, they introduced the ability for rock types to get that special defense boost in the sand. And then Garchomp Sandveil, which, on top of already being a Garchomp, being incredibly strong, um, it has that extra evasion boost. I could even argue Garchomp is too strong to be a gym leader's, on a gym leader period. So I did also create another team that is actually the second gym with Rhyhorn, who again is the previous evolution of Rhydon, but I think it still has the same vibe. You could switch it out for either Cranidos or Shieldon, but I felt a little weird about not having both, and I really wanted Onyx on here, who actually can learn the move Dragon Breath by level up. So I think it's fun to represent that here. And then Gabite as the ace. Again, the only new dragon introduced in this gym in this generation. And I think any later Gabite might feel a little weak to be the ace. So I think the second gym, I think that works here. Now for Unova, for the fifth gym, we have Fracture, Zweilous, and Druddigon. Now, I find it very weird that in Gen 5, no instance of the Dragon Gym Leader used as Zweilous. You could argue it's because it would be severely underleveled, but the hack source they use is already underleveled, so that's not a that's not an argument. Um, like I understand that Hydreigon is Getsis's ace, but it's not a Hydreigon, it's a Zweilous. Plus, it's technically more of a physical attacker, especially with its hustle ability. So it functions a lot differently from Hydreigon. So I think it'll be fine for them to have a Zweilous here. And then Druddigon as the ace with the Dragon Gem to boost whatever first dragon move it's used. Probably Dragon Tail or, in this reality, if it's some other dragon move. But regardless, I like the idea of the Unova gym leaders using the type boosting gyms that were introduced in that game. Now for Kalos, I actually created three different teams for this one. The first one is if it's the fourth gym. And once again, there really weren't that many dragon types introduced when I initially made that ruling, where I'm not going to use any pseudo legendaries at all if possible. I didn't think I would have to resort to using that many. I thought there would at least be a couple of other options in every region, but no, Dragalge and Sliggoo outside of Tyrant are the only real, other dragon options available. And just by the way it all worked out, I didn't really feel like Tyrant worked on this team, but I felt, I wanted to have another Vibrava here. But Dragalge definitely works as the ace. It is just actually pretty deceptively strong. It's not the strongest on the defensive side, but it's really high special defense, really good special attack. If it had its ability, adaptability, it could hit even stronger. So yeah, I dig this team. Plus, I honestly, I just want to point out the veteran trainer class here that I have for the trainer icon. He just already kind of looks like a dragon, dragon uh, tamer type character. I just feel like his little flaps on his jacket look like scales. His color palette is very close to the dragon aesthetic, and yeah, I really like this guy. I think he fits the dragon typing very well. So the second team I created, like I like doing with all Kalos gym leaders outside of the fire one where I just didn't really feel like doing it that time. I created one that has a mega evolution. So we have Kingdra, Dragalge, Mega Ampharos, and Tyrantrum. I think Tyrantrum fits very well as the ace of any gym leader, especially the eighth gym. It's one of my favorite Pokemon from that generation, and it's I like Dragalge as a slightly earlier gym ace, but Tyrantrum just feels like the Pokemon that deserves to be the ace somewhere. And Tyrunt being on Grants is not the same. Tyrantrum deserves the spotlight here. But if you may feel a little weird about Ampharos not natively being a dragon type, I also threw on a team with Mega Altaria. Now, Mega Altaria didn't exist in X and Y, but since I already have done the fairy video and I didn't get to talk about Mega Altaria there, I wanted to spotlight Mega Altaria here. I wanted to spotlight it somewhere, so yeah, I think this is probably the most canon team, but I really like Mega Altaria. So yeah, plus it's would be the only Pokemon here that not only would resist Dragon, actually be immune to Dragon. So it would actually be a very solid asset for this team. Next up, we have Alola, the first one that I'm actually, completely not using any pseudo legendaries at all. I think this works for the sixth gym where we have Lone Executor, Turtonator, and Drampa as the ace. Now, Drampa is not the strongest of these three. Him and Turtonator have tied base stat total, and Alolan Executor technically has the highest base stat total. But I don't know, just something about Drampa just felt the most, as far as like this lineup goes, just felt the most ace material. However, I always feel a little weird about having Pokemon that are counterparts on the same team and not being able to, you know, and like feeling one of them should be the ace, but not really, not really knowing how to wrestle with that. So, in doing a little more digging, something just fell into my lap that just made that, decision very easy for me. This trainer icon here, he is the veteran class in Alola. And in Alola, there is a trainer class called the veteran duo, where it's a veteran guy and a veteran girl, who battle you in a double battle. So I think it'd be very cool to spotlight both Turtonator and Drampa as dual aces with a double battle as the eighth gym. And this also works very well strategically because Noivern here, the only other Pokemon I added here, Noivern can set up Tailwind to make the rest of the Pokemon that are relatively slow that much faster. Alolan Exeggutor could potentially set up the Sun to make Turtonator's fire move stronger, to make Noivern's Flamethrower stronger. You could throw on Flamethrower or Fire Blast on Drampa as well. I just think this team synergizes very nicely. The first two Pokemon are extremely weak to ice, but Turtonator would be at least, neutral to ice. And Noivern is so fast, is probably going to be able to set up that Tailwind first turn to allow, the other Pokemon to hit pretty hard. So I think this team is I think it's a very cool, very well constructed team. And next we have Galar. This was another one where I wasn't really sure how to wrestle with exactly which Pokemon should be the ace here. So for this first team, I have Appleton, Dracovish, Dracozolt, and Gmax Flapple. And the way I remedied this was having it where the ace switches depending on which game you have. Um, I like the idea of, if you're playing Sword, and I think it'd be cool if the Gmax Pokemon is it can either be the one, the Flapple who would be in Sword, or it can even be the other one. Either way, I think it's cool to, especially since that generation introduced uh version exclusive changes to gym leaders. I think it'll be really cool if the ace changed. And even Milo in the post game gym leader rematches, his ace changes depending on the game. So I think it'd be cool to do something like that here too. Aesthetically, I think Appleton works best as just the base Pokemon, then Flapple works as the ace, but it could easily work either way. But I also just really dig the idea of the eighth gym in that actually was a dragon gym in that generation being a double battle. So I also created, just like with Alola, I also create another team that is also a double battle, where one of the people has Dracozolt and Flapple, and the other one has Dracovish and Appleton. And once again, the one that Gigantamaxes changes depending on the game. I like that a lot. And lastly, we have Paldea. And for Paldea, I created three different teams to represent the three different ways that the in-game trainers use terrestrialization. One being if it is a Pokemon of their type, terrestrializes into their type to make their moves even stronger. One where it is a Pokemon of their type that terrestrializes into a different type to either be defensively or offensively good into Pokemon that they usually struggle against. And then lastly, a Pokemon that is not of their type terrestrializes into their type to kind of represent the same that way that Brassius' Pseudo Wudo terrestrializes into a grass type to, essentially quote unquote give it the type it always should have had. Not, I don't think Sudowoodo, should be a grass type, but since people have always thought it should be a grass type, it's very fun to do something like that. Like how I did with Luxray being a dark type. Yeah, that I really like that kind of thing. So first, we have the fifth gym here with Cyclizar, Tatsugiri, and Flapple. Now, I have Cyclizar technically as the ace because I really like the idea of the ace Pokemon in this situation being technically more of a support Pokemon because it can use its Shed Tail and its Regenerator ability to, get back not any, but a lot of the damage it lost from shedding and basically Baton Pass into one of the other Pokemon that they can potentially set up on you. Flapple can know Dragon Dance to make its move stronger, make it faster, and you know behind that substitute that has a pretty good chance of getting at least one Dragon Dance off. Same with Tatsugiri, it can either use Rapid Spin to make it outspeed your Pokemon, or Nasty Plot to make its moves even stronger. The only little wrinkle I have with this is I'm not exactly sure how this would work coding wise because the way terrestrializing works in Gen 9 is as soon as their ace is thrown out, it immediately terrestrializes. Would it think to terrestrialize and then shed tail? Would it only terrestrialize like when it comes out the final time? I'm not really sure. It doesn't functionally matter since it's probably gonna be faster, especially by the fifth gen. It's probably gonna be faster than most of the stuff you have anyway. Um, I'm not really sure exactly how that would work. It wouldn't like, necessarily hurt or hinder it or hurt or help it, uh, regardless of where it terrestrializes. But I don't know, that's just something that I kind of had to think about, which is why this isn't my favorite instance of this team. Um, But I do like the idea of Cyclizar, even though it is their strongest Pokemon, technically being more of a support role. I don't really have to, really deal with that if Cyclizar isn't the ace and instead Diplin is the ace. I thought it'd be fun to bring in a Pokemon from the DLC here and have that Diplin terrestrialize into a Steel type. The Steel typing would make it now completely resist I think every type that dragon is usually weak to, dragon, ice, and fairy. And then if it knows Terra Blast is good into those ice and fairy types. So it's just a very good typing for dragon types and even especially dragon grass types to terrestrialize into. Because now it's also immune to poison. It's now resists flying, which would also be a problem. So yeah, this is just a very, very good typing for Diplin to turn into. And you can still do the baton passing thing with Cyclozar into Tatsugiri. It can still set up the same way, or baton pass into Diplin to just give it that one turn just to you know set up a leech seed or just you know do whatever Diplin does to whatever it can do in that one turn. But I did make one other team, and I am really proud of this team. It's again just like with the Luxray, who I turned into a dark type. It's something that I'm kind of surprised they never did anywhere in this game, but it just feels so right to do. I made Gyarados a dragon type. The thing that its mega evolution didn't even ever do, we're doing it. We are making that Gyarados terrestrialize into a dragon type. It just makes so much sense. Like, like I know it's been a meme forever that people confuse Gyarados. They're like, oh, it should be really be three types, or just ignore the flying types, just make a dragon. Like I know why they did that back in the day, but for this long, you know, it just it just makes so much sense for them to do something like this. I also added Hydrapple here to fully evolve the Diplin from the previous team. If you're the eighth gem, I think you can get away with your secondary ace being something as strong as Hydrapple, and then also having this Gyarados be the true ace. But I wanted to make three teams specifically for for the Dragon type because I just like the idea of the different Tatsugiris like looking more and more like suspicious of you as we progress here. I don't know. It doesn't really matter which Tatsugiri it has, but just I like the progression of that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down below any thoughts you have about any of these teams I created. Are there any dragon types you feel I forgot about? Are there any aces that you think didn't deserve to be aces, or any that were just on the team that you know actually deserve to be the ace? Do you disagree with the idea of me having two generations in a row that had potential options for double battles? Um, you know, just yeah. Do you disagree with any of the non-dragon Pokemon that were especially in the earlier gens? Um, I liked them a lot. I like you have the ability to be more creative with these teams, especially since the games themselves did set a precedent for dragon specialists not having all dragon teams. So I like creating this presentation a lot. So please let me know all your thoughts down below. I would like to have a discussion going, especially since I intend to make a video for every single type, and I still have a lot to go. So I want to, you know, keep iterating and improving this format. So yeah, please let me know all your thoughts down below. And with that, I will see you all next time.